Hello everyone, glad you could make it. Welcome back to another calligraphy video, and today we'll be covering the difference between Copperplate and Modern. They are both scripts, usually of the pointed pen variety, but you can also do it with brush pens and paintbrushes if you're careful. But before we get into that, I'm going to quickly just plug my Copperplate course that's coming out soon. I think all the videos are done. I just have to make a few extra things and then I can release it. If you want an in-depth video course going through my masterclass practice sheets, you can just get those yourself and teach yourself right now if you want on my website, link in the description. Anyways, I thought, what better way to teach the difference between Modern and Copperplate than to go through some of my Modern and Copperplate sheets. Simply put, Modern has a lot of variation where you can change the height, style, angle, anything. Copperplate has more rigid rules to adhere to and stick with. There's no real changing. You can get a little fancy with the flourishing, but that's about it. That's the simple definition, but let's get some visual examples. So if you were to write in Modern calligraphy, it would look something like that. If you just learned strictly the alphabet and how to connect the letters, that's what it would look like. You can vary, say, your baseline. So if you vary your baseline, you're just changing where the letter will stop, and you can vary that and change that as much as you want. It kind of gives it a bounce, as a lot of people like. The only thing I could say about that is if you bounce too much, you might make like an A look like a Q. So clarity is a big problem with Modern, because if you don't bounce in the right spot or you kind of flourish too much, you've lost its readability. So next is varying your spacing. You can obviously just keep it nice and tight like you'd normally do, but another thing that kind of gives it a wispy feeling of Modern is spacing. So you can kind of write your letters, and as long as they're connected, you can spread it out, which gives it, obviously this is an over example, too far maybe the other way, but it looks kind of nice. It looks kind of wispy. You can kind of see varying, back up to this example. Varying the space and the baseline allows you to have kind of a nice wistful script. And then the last thing you can kind of do is change the X height, which basically means just the height of the letter. If you extend the letter, sometimes it's hard to understand what it is. S is a common one that people like to stretch. Sometimes you can infer what they're meaning, but it's kind of hard sometimes depending on how drastic you do it. So again, you can play with it, but be careful. So then when you mix all of those together, you vary your baseline, your spacing, letter stretching, you have a nice wispy, wistful script, which everyone seems to think is a classic. It looks nice. You can basically put it on anything. It's a great script to learn. Now, you can kind of move to Copperplate. Once you've kind of learned your ins and outs of dip pen calligraphy, you can kind of try to learn some rigid rules if you're into it. So Copperplate, what defines it is its strict rules. 4 things. 1, angle, 55 degrees, no exceptions. So typically for practicing, there's these little grids that are at 55, and you have to try to, every time you do a downstroke, you'd be at that angle. Typically, when practicing, I have it right directly towards these 55 degree angle, directly towards me, and I'd pull towards me. Makes it a lot easier. That's how many people write. Next thing to give Copperplate its style is its spacing. It's very specific. There's a certain amount of space in between each letter and every connection. Basically, the width in between your letter, say this part of the M, that width is essentially the space in between every single letter. That has to be the same throughout, because if you're trying your best to keep it the same and one thing's a little off, people will look at the mistake. So it has to be kind of picture perfect. Don't let this discourage you. It's just one of those things that it takes a long time to learn. I don't have it perfect yet. It's something you work on for a long time to get the skill where you'd want to be. There's obviously the strokes. There's certain strokes that are only in Copperplate. The first notably is the flat tops and bottoms. So for I's, A's, many letters, if you start with a downstroke, it has to be flat, or certain letters like P in Copperplate have a flat top and a flat bottom. There are ways to achieve that. That's for another time. You can find it in these sheets, but we're just going to cover the differences. Another stroke that defines Copperplate is the dots. So there are certain, on the uppercase letters, you can see that there's certain little dots that add a nice flourish touch to each of the letters, and S's, C. There's certain little ornamental strokes that just kind of give it a little bit of a flavor, if you will. Lastly, the flourishing loops, while modern also has these, they're a little bit more exact. The flourishing loops will have a nice ovally style to it. However, like when modern, you can kind of get away with a little bit more circular, and no one seems to, and more wild flourishes. There's less, I guess, rules on that too. Lastly, it's the letter height. There's a specific height for each letter that you shouldn't really vary from unless, say, flourishing on it. Your normal letters that go above the baseline that you know, L, K, H. There's also some additional ones that go below as well, like F, that's an oddball. But then there's some arbitrary heights to, say, D and T. It's a lower height letter. Like D would only go to here, while L ascends all the way to the top. And then P, another oddball, would have a flat top and bottom right there. And those are the 4 things that make Copperplate Copperplate. Now I'm going to write them side by side to see which one you like better and which one you want to learn, and I can direct you to a video that will help you, or a course. That's going to do it for this video. I suggest checking out both of these scripts if you want to learn them. I'll have some links in the description. Obviously, the sheets on my store are always there, but there's plenty of resources and videos on my website or on YouTube. So thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the course and take care.